Welcome to Sunday Morning Sitting Group. Lisa reminded me that there are services that my family was not observant, although I'm Jewish, so I never even remember that there are 2 days of services for Rosh Hashanah, and lots of people are observing that holiday, the Jewish New Year. So Happy New Year, everybody. It's been quite a year, and may this be the beginning of a better time for us. And so my name is Trudy. As I said, I'm the founding teacher. I say here at InsightLA, but InsightLA has become everywhere that we are home. In everybody's home is now InsightLA. I don't know when we'll be able to gather again in person. And I know that some of you wanted to have breakout groups, and others of you did not want to have breakout groups. And I noticed too that when we had our day-long, Lisa and I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, that when it was time in the afternoon for a breakout group, you could just see the boxes click shut, people fleeing because they didn't want to be in a breakout group. And so what I was thinking that we could do for the people who really miss the in-person, we all miss the in-person connection, but for people who would like to have breakout groups and a chance to really talk to each other in a smaller group setting, I was thinking that we could, the people who are interested in that could bring lunch or just have lunch, have a sandwich or whatever. And then at 12:30, when the group ends, there could be breakout groups that just have a sandwich or a salad, have some lunch together, or not, but who have a chance to visit. And then everybody who doesn't want to be in a breakout group, that's fine. The time would be over. So you can let me know in the chat what you think about this. I thought it would be a nice thing that it's always nice to eat together. I, of course, more would focus on eating together, but just talking together and being together is good too. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. And if you like the idea, if you would want to stay and do that, and we could start that next week. So we've been really looking at more or less systematically all summer, the elements of awakening. And I'll just give, today we've looked at all 7 of those elements. We've really devoted, I guess, 2 weeks to equanimity, 3 weeks to the topic of energy, or enthusiasm, or effort, because that one has so many meanings and can be so fraught for us who never feel we're doing enough. And I want to just maybe do a talk that kind of brings them together, sums them up somewhat, and also to acknowledge that this is a very hard time that we are living through right now. And that if you are feeling the loss of one of the great feminist icons, a hero of mine, and I know of many people, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, this is really important too, because her whole way of working and being was so inclusive, really working, they say across the aisle, but more than across the aisle, really working in such a way that, as I reposted on my Instagram, that people want to come and work together. And I'm also in awe of the fact that she worked and worked and worked, even when she was sick in the hospital, even when she was 87 years old. She kept working so hard. It makes me exhausted, actually, to think about how hard she worked. And she did that for us. So I just want to acknowledge her. And let's sit together. So for those of you who may be here for the first time, we do about a half an hour of meditation. We have some teaching and then some chance for exchange together. So find your comfortable sitting posture. And I'll do a little bit of guidance, maybe some prompts throughout, but I'm really leaning toward the silence today. We did a long guided meditation last week, and these are all posted on YouTube if you missed it and you want to hear it. It was a pretty complete loving kindness meditation, but focused more on this self here. But we also extended our loving kindness to people who are having a hard time, to difficult people, difficult parts of ourselves, all beings everywhere. So that is posted if you like. And today, let's be a little more silent. Just noticing how it is for you right now. And you might want to take a deep breath in and just breathe in that energizing, much cleaner air, thank goodness. And then breathing out and relaxing, just relaxing into this moment. And letting go of everything that came before this moment and everything that may follow. Just letting it be. Letting it be sometimes works better for me than letting it go. The thoughts of the past, the plans and wondering about the future, just letting it all be as we relax into this moment of life right here, right now. What it's like in the body, sitting here or lying here, whatever posture you're in, just what it's like for the body this morning. And just receiving this moment. Shifting the body back ever so slightly. And just receiving the flow of physical sensation, of sounds of life appearing and disappearing. The flow of thoughts and feelings. Just riding the waves of breath, receiving each breath. Relaxing as you breathe out. Aware of the ebb and flow of experience. Just sitting still. And we don't have to quiet the mind. We're just letting the mind quiet down, letting the heart relax. Appreciating the air we breathe, appreciating the breath breathing us, breathing you, breathing me. Appreciating the aliveness of this moment. the aliveness of the body, the awake, the alive consciousness of the mind and heart. Appreciating existence, existing, your existence, my existence. Just existing is enough for now. And every time there's a cycling through a patch of thinking or story in the mind and heart, and then there's the awakening. Oh, I'm here, just now. And the mindfulness emerges just a little bit stronger each time. Just receiving what life has to offer in this moment, especially this grounding in this sense of simply being in this body, being in this mind and heart, being in this particular moment of all eternity. Being just the way you are, knowing and appreciating life in this moment just as it is. So as I said, we have been studying the elements of awakening, the elements of, the energizing ones, of having a joyful interest in what's happening, um, being interested enough that we want to make the effort to learn more. At the same time, learning how to just calm the heart and be able to appreciate the aliveness that we can feel when we're quiet and still. And really beginning to use mindfulness and our awareness of what's happening to come into balance. These practices are designed to help us feel happier and more balanced and peaceful. And so we notice, you've heard me give the instruction so many times of, like, if the mind is really kind of sleepy or dull, especially if it's after lunch or early in the morning, to focus more on the in-breath, the energizing breath, to bring some energy and aliveness into a sleepy moment when we're meditating. Or if the mind is very agitated and jumpy and moving all around and busy, to just focus a little more on the out breath and that relaxing, releasing, calming breath. And this is how we begin to come back into balance. And sometimes it's completely unbalanced, and that's okay too, just to know that. Sometimes there's really no interest in turning toward experience. It's just not there, the interest. Okay, just turning our attention to something else that might be more interesting for the mind and heart. We can do that. And I just want to acknowledge, as I talk about balance and balancing and being more peaceful, that we're in a really, this is a challenging time in so many ways. The pandemic told us to go to our rooms and stay in our rooms. It felt like that. Stay in your room, and then what do you do when you're in your room? What do we do when we're in our room? Hopefully we quiet the mind, we touch into our hearts. A friend of mine I was talking with this morning said to me, "Oh, I have really appreciated this long time for reflection about my life." And I thought, that's wonderful. I don't know that I used the time to reflect in that way, but that's wonderful. But along with those wonderful times of reflection alone in our rooms, it's been difficult. And I found a poem by Paul. No, it's a poem about Paul Robeson. Excuse me. The poem is called Paul Robeson. I have another one by. Anyway, this is about Paul Robeson, and it's from the African American poet Gwendolyn Brooks. She says, "That time, cool and clear." Oh, Paul Robeson, by the way, for those of you who may not know, was an amazing singer, opera quality voice, African-American hero of radical progressive politics, who I think wound up having to move to Canada. I didn't look up his bio, but kind of a hero and a legend of progressive political movements, and very courageous artist and beautiful artist with an amazing voice. That time, cool and clear, cutting across the hot grit of the day. The major voice, the adult voice, forever rolling river, foregoing tearful tale of bale and barge, and other symptoms of an old despond. Warning in music words, devout and large, that we are each other's harvest, we are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. And this is the refuge in community, the refuge in Sangha, that the Buddha in the ancient texts, said there were three powerful refuges, three pillars that support our practice. Refuge in awareness, in the capacity of our own minds and hearts to awaken, which is called refuge in Buddha, our Buddha nature, our awakened nature, our true nature. Refuge in the teachings that show us how to come to clarity, how to delight in moments of truth, and refuge in Sangha, or community. And here's one more about that. The ancient redwood trees of California huge as they are, have very shallow root systems, yet they cannot be blown over by the strongest wind. The secret of their stability is the interweaving of each tree's roots with those that stand by it. Thus, a vast network of support is formed just beneath the surface. In the wildest storms, these trees hold each other up. So that's us. You know, we are the trees that can hold each other up during a hard time. And it's really important. I feel we need each other more than ever during a hard time. And this is a hard time with the pandemic going on, with all the stirred upness of a pre-election time, of uncertainty in the world, the fires in California, then Canada, in Oregon, in Washington. And I could go on and on. I don't need to list all the challenging things that are presenting themselves to us during this time. And the air, I don't know about you, I've heard that up north it's quite clear. The winds, of course, could shift, but in the Bay Area, at least, it's a lot clearer. It's clearer here in LA. And I am so grateful for that. I smoked for years when I was young, so my lungs are not, they're delicate. I'm sorry it's no good in Sonoma County. I just see that. Anyway, for those of us with delicate lungs, this having some relief is just so welcome, so welcome. And I was thinking about, I thought about scuba diving. I don't know how many of you have scuba dived, you know, diving as opposed to snorkeling, going under the water with oxygen and gear and so forth to be able to stay under the water for a while. I've always been interested in looking deeply, including into the ocean, which I love. And years ago got certified as a diver. And when you dive, it's very silent except for the sound of your breath. You hear your breath in the regulator that brings the oxygen to you. And so you hear that sound. And that's the only sound that you usually ever hear under the water. And the air is so precious. When I learned to dive, which was, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 35 years ago, a long time ago. When I learned to dive, one of the skills that you had to learn was called buddy breathing, so that you always dive with a buddy. You don't dive alone. It's the power of Sangha. You know, you don't go in alone. Maybe if you're a very, very experienced diver, you could, but it's not recommended. And it's just like we sit together, you know, we take that deep dive into our own minds, into our own hearts. We do it together so that we can support each other silently, energetically. We support each other. And so you dive together. And in those days, when you trained to learn how to dive, you had to learn to do this buddy breathing, so that if your buddy ran out of air or there was some equipment malfunction, something happened, you would share your regulator. You would take a breath, then you would take it out of your mouth and hand it to your buddy to take a breath. They'd take a breath, give it back to you. And you practice doing that, sharing the oxygen while you're underwater. It's actually scary the first time you do it. It's really hard to let go of that regulator. And in fact, I wanted to take a refresher course, and I was told that you don't have to do that anymore. They don't teach buddy breathing anymore. You bring an extra regulator along with your gear. I don't know how it works because I haven't taken the refresher course yet. Some of you who are divers and who are younger and learned more recently, I'm sure you know, but basically you just learn to take the other one into your mouth and take it out. And I asked why they didn't teach buddy breathing anymore. I had thought that was something very powerful and intimate and connecting. And they said, because too many people died when their buddy didn't want to share the air. And, this is the other side of life, the side of us that really clings to our own happiness and our own comfort and our own ease, and is afraid to let go and afraid to share, afraid that the other person won't give it back, that will drown. And yes, I was actually very surprised to hear that. I just learned that yesterday and was surprised to hear that. But the air that we breathe, the air that surrounds us, so important to us. And I feel like what we're doing here is a form of maybe not buddy breathing, but just supporting each other to be able to breathe more easily, to breathe more peacefully, and to be more in balance when we're out of balance, to come into balance and to be able to do that with some joy. Last week, we practiced loving kindness together. And so often loving kindness is the force that can help us bring these different elements of awakening, the arousing ones, the calming ones, that can help us bring them into balance. That sense of loving kindness that brings some peace to our hearts, that allows us to gladden the heart, to rest in a sense of our own existence and our own being that is happy, that is joyful, that is appreciative. To balance the difficulties of our life with this kind of spirit. Because after all, we're not going to be of much help to anybody if we sink into despair and hopelessness. And it's easy to do. My granddaughter texted me when she heard about RBG's death, and she said, "I'm so scared." And you know, young women, we looked to this person who was, I don't know if any of you saw the movie On the Basis of Sex. Whatever your political views, if you care about your mothers, your sisters, your daughters, that's what feminism is. If you care, you might want to watch this movie. It was a biopic that was really, I loved it, On the Basis of Sex. And so this spirit of breathing deeply, of being as peaceful and happy as we can in the midst of all of this, this is an antidote to the hopelessness and despair that can, that does sometimes for all of us envelop the heart. And I heard somebody talk about this once, and it struck me as so apt that that what we are doing is we're receiving life. Every moment we're receiving life in the form of whatever it may be. And the perfection that we all long for is unfortunately found by including all the imperfection, like we did last week with the loving kindness practice. And so it reminds me of, Jack tells me stories of when he was a monk. And often this comes up when we're eating, and I'll say, "Oh my gosh, you know, what if you could only have that to eat? And what if you," and he tells me stories of how they would go, the monks would go, the Buddha arranged this very, very brilliantly, actually, so that the monastics could not keep or store any food. They had to go on what was called the alms round, walking from home to home and receiving offerings in their begging bowl. And that they were completely, utterly dependent on the community to feed them. And I mean, imagine that much vulnerability. It's like, it's actually more vulnerable than being a wild creature who can't just go to Ralph's, you know, and get what they need. Completely dependent on what was put in that bowl. And often the monasteries were located in rural areas that were poor communities, and maybe people didn't have anything yummy to put in that bowl. But then when they would get back to the monastery, you know, whether it was good or not, that was your food, so you would just eat it. And actually, Jack told me that in his monastery, what Ajahn Chah would do is, if they got like something really, really delicious, like, I don't know what people actually eat for dessert in Thailand, but let's just use, maybe they got some cheesecake or some flourless chocolate cake, something that would be really delicious in their bowl. And then they also got, I don't know, some fish sauce and, you know, just a bunch of veggies if they were lucky, or just rice. So what he would do is they would bring their bowls back and he would mush it all up together so that nobody could have just the, you know, the person might got a bigger piece of dessert, or no, it was all like cheesecake, fish sauce, flourless chocolate cake, pickles, all mushed together. And that was your meal of the day. You just eat it. But you know, we could look at our life like this, just like the air. We're receiving life. We're receiving experiences every single day. What is in your bowl today? Right now, we have the joy of being together, of meditating together, of hearing teachings, of interacting with each other. What else will be in your bowl today? You don't know. I don't know. But the experiences, whatever happens of that day, in that day, is what we have received. We can relate to it as though we have received it in our begging bowl. And that is our meal. And that is what we eat that day. And in what spirit do we eat it? Very grumpy because the yummy chocolate got mushed up with the pickles. You know, very grateful because we get to live another day and be nourished. And that spirit is possible too. So just different ways that we can balance ourselves. And I said earlier, you know, if we don't have interest in something, if we really can't bring any mindfulness to it, it just, that's okay. We don't have to look at that thing. We can look at something else. We can bring our attention to something else. And sometimes during a hard time or a hard moment, we just need to look at something pleasant or something beautiful. And that's when I'm so grateful for the artists and the poets and the musicians and nature, the beauty of nature, that we can turn our attention to something beautiful and find our interest is awakened again, and we can be attentive, be awake again, and find some delight in the way things are, just as they are, instead of being closed down and hopeless and so forth. Last week, I recommended a documentary called The Social Dilemma. I don't know if any of you watched it. If you watched it, pass it on to others, please. I think it's really important when we're talking about receiving all experience, you know, the spicy things, the sweet things, the pickled things, maybe the slightly rancid things of our life. When we're talking about receiving all the elements of experience, I think of that documentary because it really shows me that I'm not receiving the full range of information. And I think if you can watch with, if you can watch with your teenagers like Laura just did, that's even better. I'm not receiving the full range of information, for example, that's out there. And the information that I receive is so different from the information that others may receive. And I mean, this was driven home to me in an email that I received from a friend in China who has been an interpreter, a translator for me over the times that I taught in China and the time that we taught the Chinese people here. I think it was back in June. I think it was back in June, May or June. Linda. And Linda wrote and said, I'm frightened by the free fall in US-China relations, even since we had our June or May retreat, our last retreat together. And she said, American warplanes have flown around China 2,000 times, and the ambassador left without notifying our government. We found out about it on the State Department Twitter feed. And I thought, this is not information that I have. This is not information that I know about. this is information that she has. And that's a very extreme example, but I have had conversations with people who may not share my views, and my views are not that well informed politically, I will admit. I read mainstream media. I don't watch television, so not that well informed. And was given a list of alternative media sites to look at, and I started looking at them. I spent hours one day. I was really surprised. All this information that I've never come across, but it's out there. And is it true? Is it not? We need to look at these different points of view. We need to eat the different stuff that's in our bowl and appreciate it as nourishing, but also know what it is that we're consuming, and know that in the case of our social media, in the case of Google, in the case of pretty much our whole online world, what we're consuming has already been parsed for us, depending on what our interests are. We can't just turn toward all experience and be curious about it, because we're not receiving all experience. Individually, yes. When we look inside, yes. And there's a temptation to just say, okay, I'm going to check out. I have certainly felt this. I'm just going to go and retreat. I'm just going to focus on my inner life. But we're not separate from each other. And that's a great focus to have. And I encourage all of us to take times to do that. But we have another life too. And it's our life with each other, our relational life, our political life. And hopefully the strengthening and balancing of the factors, the elements of awakening in our inner lives are going to give us the courage to look, to take that deep sea dive, to look underneath the surface of what's being offered to us and see if we can delight in knowing more the truth of things. And if it's not delightful, if it's painful to know more, then we balance that by bringing some beauty into our lives. I balanced watching The Social Dilemma with watching my octopus teacher. Did I tell you about this one? If I didn't, put it in the chat. It's on Netflix. Caroline, just put it in the chat, My Octopus Teacher. And it's a beautiful story of a man who, he overworked, he got depressed, he felt alienated from himself, his life, his family. He wasn't relating to his kid or his partner. And he lived by the sea, and he realized what he needed to do was go into the ocean. And unlike divers with their gear and oxygen, he dove without oxygen and just learned to expand his lung capacity. Anyway, he met an octopus. And he thought, what if I come every day and visit this octopus? Will we have a relationship? What will happen? And he did that every single day. Calm, stormy weather. So this documentary is very beautiful. It's the story of his relationship with the octopus and how it unfolds. And the photography is gorgeous, and I strongly recommend it. He feels that she became his teacher and healed his depression, and it's just beautiful. Oh my gosh, I didn't even look at my talk about the 7 elements of awakening today. Next week, I will. I have it, but got lost and interested in other things, just as I'm telling you. There wasn't really the willingness this morning to look at the talk I prepared. So brought attention to other things, and I hope that's okay with you. And now I would like to open up to you. So we have time for some dialogue with each other. And so if you would like to offer an observation or a question from your own practice, your own life experience, your own bowl, you can raise your hand in the participant column. Just click on participants and you'll see the raise hand function. And Caroline will see your raised hand and call on you to unmute yourself, and we can have a moment together.
All right, we already have our first question. Ronnie, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi. You know, the thing with the news, I always think about that. And that is like, you never really know what the truth is about anything, because everybody has their own spin on it. Whether you know, you could listen to different viewpoints similar to yours, the same as yours, completely different than yours. And I guess what I try to do is just think about it, and then just take what I believe based on my own thinking and who I've read, what the truth is. I mean, what can you do to really find out the truth?
I think what you're describing is one thing you can do, Ronnie. You really can. And different people will do it differently, just like people do practice and meditation differently. And there's no one right way for everybody. But I think the key is something that has gotten very much diminished these days, which is the opportunity to listen and learn to each other, from each other, especially when we have very different points of view. So thank you for that.
Yeah, one other thing, I also think one of the most important things is to think about it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, after you've listened to other people, to think about what makes sense to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So if anybody has any other suggestions, please bring them forth.
Yeah, bring them for us. Put them in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Clark B, if you would go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, Trudy.
Hi, Clark.
Thank you for that morning. That was really a wonderful sit. I enjoy it every week with this group so much. It is, you know, the anchor of my week, which is just wonderful to be able to spend the time with everybody. I guess in terms of this bowl analogy, I'm becoming aware of something as I try to become more mindful and aware of living life. And it's not so much external media, this is more internal. As I become aware that certain paths I could follow, certain opportunities in my life, and in particular, I'm thinking about the ones that are very dramatic and maybe very upsetting to me. And I'm becoming more aware of, as I see these paths, like, is that going to be a big upsetting path? Is this something I need to embrace? And as I'm becoming more mindful about it, and from a couple different influences, they're saying, you know, try to be aware of if this is a worthwhile path for you to get into, if this is drama that's worth you getting into. And what I've noticed is, as I step back from some of paths that all my life I would have run into, I would have said, oh my God, I have to deal with this. Oh my God, this is something I'm going to have to take on. I've just stepped back from them and just let the situation unfold without me rushing into it. And I will say there's an odd effect about it, is I kind of feel a little bit more empty, a little bit more barren, and a little bit more uncomfortable, that without my pattern of typical drama, it's requiring me to kind of sit with the discomfort of not wrapping the drama around me and just kind of sitting with the situation. And I wonder if that's anything that is discussed or approached or thoughts about that. Okay.
Sorry, somebody came to the door. No, I heard you. I just muted for a second to address the person at the door. Yeah, this is really important, because what you're talking about is those neutral moments that I talked about last week that can be a doorway to equanimity, to spaciousness, to peacefulness. But it's also, we're kind of addicted to the excitement and the adrenaline and, wanting bliss and ecstasy, and we want intense experiences. And who wants serenity? It's boring. I remember my first teacher, the Korean Zen master, Daesang Tsunemi, used to say to us, you all want Coca-Cola, you don't want to drink water. I mean, he just was trying to say, you want that fizz, you want that sweetness, and the plain water isn't so much appreciated, like the air, until it's full of junk, and we can't, breathe it safely. And then we kind of just appreciate plain air. So I think when the drama reaches a point where you're suffering with it, which yours did and has, it calls you to really question what you're doing. And it is uncomfortable. And that's where the element of, we called it energy or interest, investigation, those elements of awakening, the energy, it takes courage to look at what is not easy to see. It takes courage to depend completely on the oxygen on your back and go deep under the ocean. Things like that. It takes skill to do it safely. And that's what we develop here, are skills and methods that can support us to do it safely. And by safely, I don't mean without difficulty, without fear, or without rage or pain. By safely, I mean deeply, deeply trusting that we have what it takes to learn and to see and to find a skillful response to what we learn and see.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the bowl, it's like, it's, maybe it's a little, as you say, bland, and you're getting the bowl and you're thinking, well, do I put a lot of spice in this or not, or whatever that drama is? And it's really some sense of, like you say, trust and faith, that if I let this be and let this play out without me pouring my own gas, my drama on top of it, and just letting it happen, that I guess it's like, that I'm being responsible enough as a human being, because it seems like we've all been taught, you got to be the master of your ship and pushing buttons and controlling things and standing up. And a lot, it's just being mindful about, maybe I don't need to do all that. Maybe I can just accept what's in the bowl and work with it at face value. But it's just a weird experience.
I'm glad you're going through it. I really congratulate you for going through it, because that beginning to release control, to let go of controlling experience, is actually pathway to discovering there is a happiness that is vast and deep as the ocean, and it really is yours, ours, our birthright to experience that. It's a peaceful happiness, it's not like whee, it's not the Coca-Cola happiness, but you're really, I just really cheer you on to stay with the weirdness.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So can you unmute Alana? Or Alana, unmute yourself.
Yes, Alana, you can go ahead and share.
Hi, Trudy.
Hi. Nice to not see you, but hear you.
There was a lot going on here. Hi.
Hi.
I thank you so much for your Dharma talk. It's always nice to hear you. I watched that movie yesterday and was very set aback by my own addiction to social media, especially right now because I am pretty secluded. I check my phone like way too often. It's kind of, it's a good thing to notice.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I have more of like a practical question. So I've been having, and I don't know if this is just more of a distraction, but I've been having a lot of like sensations in my face when I'm meditating. So I'm like feeling numbness and feeling like pulsating. And I'm just wondering, because I don't really talk to people about this stuff, is that something that you've ever experienced when sitting? And is it more of like a
I'm not
diversion?
going to talk about what I've experienced sitting because it's so wild, but
Okay.
yes, you can experience all kinds of the more you get quiet and the more you get still and the more the mind becomes concentrated and collected, gathered in all the disparate fragments of our being and our experience, the more that happens, the more energy builds. Actually, it brings energy to your, to your whole being. And that energy I just think of it sometimes sort of dances around the body in different places. And sometimes there can be a feeling of like shivers. There can be all kinds of phenomena. And so what you're describing, that sort of sensations changing and moving, you're experiencing it in the face, but it can be experienced anywhere in the body. And I've talked before about there's a list. It's in one of the ancient Korean Buddhist texts, a list called the 12 weird things that you experience in meditation. And I always loved that list because it normalizes the weird things that you experience in meditation. Things like feeling light as a feather, like you could just float away into space, or feeling so heavy and leaden that you could just, drop through the earth all the way to China, or you could, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to reassure you that sometimes it's just a sign of practice.
Okay.
Yeah, a good sign. And then Ava asked, how is your back?
Oh, it's okay. Thank you for asking. It's like that ebb and flow. I'm just trying to do my other practices, my physical asana practices to help cultivate something. But just the constant knowledge that it's there and that it'll come and go, and because it still hurts. But I think I texted you like a couple months ago. I was having like weird colors in my head and I thought I was having a stroke. So like I think sometimes, especially I don't know what's happening with meditation and being alone and not having this community on a regular basis, other than online. Because I think that, I don't know about other people, but I don't meditate for some sort of affect. I just like do it because I guess I feel like I'm supposed to be doing it.
Yeah.
So
Keep doing it. For whatever reason you do it, just keep doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for everything.
And just pretend we're here together in person. I feel close to you.
Me too. Nice to see you. And
so Arundhati has her hand up, and I think Bob, Caroline, you know who's who.
Okay, Arundhati, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi Trudy, thank you for the practice today. And I had a question also regarding the bowel, because I think, this week some things came up. I had some difficult conversations in a very, not in an unplanned way. And so I feel, something rancid has been put in my bowel. That's not necessarily about something now from the present, but something from the past. But experiences that I have had that had not been, that had been hard for me. And now I'm in the state where I am looking at that rancid past and wondering, how do I digest this? And, how do I process this? And I was wondering if you had any suggestions.
Yeah.
Because, not everything is planned and things just happen. And yeah.
When you say everything is planned and things just happen, you mean things just arise unbidden. It's not something that you invited. It just, it appears for whatever reason. And, the way that we work with things in meditation is really to offer a kind of bow to the experience. Because just like you would bow to the person who put something in your bowl, you haven't tasted it yet. You don't know how rancid it is or isn't. Maybe it doesn't smell so good, but it's their offering. And so you offer a bow. And it's that feeling of something has appeared in your experience, and because it's in your experience and it has already appeared, what kind of relationship are you going to make with it? So if you can make a relationship of interest, investigation, exploration, I want to actually, even though it doesn't smell good, I'm going to come a little closer so I can see what this actually is. What is it in the body? What does it feel like? What kind of stories does it generate into, in the mind? And then if it feels really overwhelming, I love psychotherapy. I was a psychotherapist for, I worked for 25 years doing that. And I worked with
I work with my psychotherapist, but I'm just wondering if, I mean, if I try, so let's say, something happens in the beginning of a week, which I feel is not going to be beneficial to me. That's why, and I understand you go to it and you accept it, but what if it poisons the rest of your week? Or, I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's very true. Like, I'll have some experiences that will poison the rest of my week, and then I'll get over it. But it doesn't feel like you get the bowl every day, and some things just remain in the bowl rather than like being done at the end of the day. But
the things that remain in the bowl are things that are really asking for more attention from you. And whether it's attention that you need to offer to yourself in terms of loving kindness or self-compassion, or whether it's attention that requires you to actually do something in relationship to somebody, speak to them, tell them how you feel, ask for something. You know what I mean? It might be something that it's not just about you, but maybe somebody said or did something that hurt you, that stung, that stayed in your bowl. And then that's something that, what I think the painful things that happen in relationship really do need to be healed in relationship.
Okay.
We can't just sit by ourselves and meditate them away.
Yeah, I wish, that would be so much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Bob, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and share if you'd like.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Trudy.
Hi, Bob.
So a couple of things that I realized were related in my mind. Like, one was like, what you said about Sangha being a support that we have to face all that's going on. That's been really important for me. And I so appreciate that I can come now on Zoom and participate here. And I hope it doesn't go away when coronavirus goes away. That's a vote. I was struck by your thing about buddy breathing. I did do that training 50 years ago. And it struck me as kind of a metaphor for what's going on in our society right now, is that, like, I feel like the people on, quote, the other side want my air. Like when I heard RBG died, I immediately went into a rant about what they are going to do now. And there was something else you said when you were talking about community, where I thought, it's like, here's what I took from, it's not just this Sangha that's going to support me to deal with it. It's that we all have to be a Sangha if this is going to work somehow. It's like, we all have to get on the same side. We all have to share the same air, which we do anyway. I mean, we do literally share the same air. And so it helps some of it. I have family members who I love, who have very different political points of view, and that helps me. It helps me humanize them out there. And I do loving kindness with respect to them, but I wondered if you had some other ideas about how you can feel community with them, because I feel like that's good for me. There's a drain on the quality of my life that I don't feel that, that I'm just into, it's us versus them, their air, my air. their vote, my vote, whatever. And I'd like to start to change that more. So thanks.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I brought up the social dilemma in terms of how do we begin to feel we're in the same boat. You know, the ancient texts in the Tibetan tradition, the Himalayan Buddhism, always begin with everybody wants to be happy. That's how everybody wants to be happy. Nobody wants to be sad. Everybody wants to live. For the most part, we certainly don't want our life taken away from us. We might choose to end our life, but we don't want someone else to end our life without our choosing to end our life. We have to come down to these very basic common, we're all parents, we all care about our children. Do you know what I mean? We have to come down to these basic human qualities. And that's why I talked about Van Jones's book and meeting with him. I guess by now it was about a month ago, because that was what he was all about, was finding common humanity with people who were so different and who hated him and his politics. Like that meeting that he describes it in his book, where finally the white people experiencing the opioid crisis turned to the Black community that knew a lot about addiction. And then the people from South Central met with the people from West Virginia, completely opposite, just like you're describing, and really hating each other's views. And so he asked them each to bring a photo of somebody they loved that they had lost, and to share the photos and talk about the people. And within 20 minutes, people were hugging and had tears in their eyes, and to find these basic human experiences that we all share that are way deeper and more fundamental than our politics. That's the only thing I know right now, and other people hopefully can chime in on the chat, and Bob will look and see. But what I appreciate about your question very much is I feel your heartfelt longing to be able to not other people, to be able to feel connected.
Yes, for sure.
And also you're kind of monitoring your mindfulness about your tendency to do that, to say them and they, and I really appreciate that, Bob.
Thanks, Trudy.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and Meredith, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself, and this will probably be the last comment question for today.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, thank you again, Trudy, for this wonderful morning, and everyone who's on in with us. All what to say here? Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but then I thought, all of a sudden I feel really sad. But
Just stay with that for a moment. Do you want to just stay with that for a moment?
This was true. That's some other time too. Sad, yeah. Well, what comes to mind, and I'm now really shaky actually, is what I thought was, well, I'm going home. And home, well, let's just say I've been, home is a big word for me, as probably every person on earth, but gosh, I feel really anxious. I feel sick to my stomach. I'm going to work. No, I was going to say, I've been on my own path without the support of my childhood family for many years. And I don't question either or all of us at this point, but I have been profoundly lonesome. and missed them, and came to recognize in the last couple of years that my feelings that I have sometimes of I want to go home is grief. And I'm going to work when we disperse this afternoon. And I'm going to caretake an elderly 97-year-old guy who is as spry as anyone you've ever met. I'm grieving my dad, which was one, maybe the most impossible mountain. That, you know, various mountains have this sign on them saying, impossible, you can't. And then practice says, yeah, sure you can, try it. Very much a loss as if it were part of me. I mean, I don't know what to say, except it has seemed absolutely for sure in my mind impossible to grieve my father, with whom I was profoundly enmeshed via my childhood. And
You know, maybe these feelings that you're having, Meredith,
yeah,
when you feel, you know, sad and shaky and sick to your stomach, maybe those are the manifestations of grief for your father, because he wasn't a father that you could really trust and to be good to you.
I know, yeah.
You know, I mean, not that he was all bad or anything, but there
No,
was, you know, those were difficult relationships, as I recall from our conversation. And
yeah,
so maybe if you have this idea of grief as being something kind of noble and beautiful sadness of missing somebody, maybe you will feel some of that in working with your 97-year-old, who's definitely probably bringing up these feelings for you. That's so understandable. But maybe too, some of the other things in your bowl, you know, like that shakiness or sick to your stomach, or, oh my God, suddenly I feel sad, I don't know what I wanted to say. Those are all, I think, pieces of missing your dad, missing having had a father who would guide you and support you and provide you with the kind of foundation that you missed in some ways, in at least in your young adult life. I don't know when you were a child, but you know, at least in your young adult life, as you were saying. And I just want to share with you that while you were talking and I was looking at you, I remembered seeing you in the Zendo at Spark Street. You came to Spark Street, didn't you?
I did.
I remember what you looked like when you were young, and you came and sat with us.
Holy shit.
I know. The image just appeared in my consciousness. I saw you in the Zendo, and I remember thinking, oh, she's from San Francisco Zen Center. You know, like, oh,
yeah.
she's from, you know, like, they're so cool. She's from that Sangha. I know. Isn't that interesting? It just,
yeah, it is.
Things just appearing in your consciousness, right?
Right.
Like Arundhati was saying, but this was kind of it wasn't even happy or sad. It was just, I just saw you.
Yeah, I understand.
You there.
Yeah.
We have to stop for today, but thank you for that.
Well, I want to thank you for my growing, as of this moment, awareness of how I missed having a dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very ill, obviously. I mean, it's not obvious to everybody because they don't know, but that's okay. He was profoundly possessive and just very, very violent. And
well, we have to stop.
But thank you, and it's hard for me to keep around it.
I want to say that this working with your 97-year-old is going to actually help you. It's going to help. Yeah.
Thank you, Trudy.
Yeah. Thank you,
sweetheart. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you in the
So let's just sit for a minute, everybody. Less than a minute. How's that? You know, I've heard of speed dating. This is speed sitting. And we offer the goodness of our practice, whatever we may feel grateful for, the company of each other, the community, the Sangha, the teachings, the historical Buddha who made it all possible. We offer our gratitude in the form of these wishes for all beings to share in the blessings of practice, whatever that may be for them. May we and all beings grow in wisdom and compassion. And before everybody is unmuted to say goodbye, if there's any announcement, I forgot to give you room for that, Caroline. Carolyn, is there anything you want to announce?
Yeah, so there's 2 upcoming events this next week. We have the Undoing Patriarchy and Unveiling the Sacred Masculine for Men and Masculine Identified People, and that's Friday through Sunday. And then there's the second event next Saturday that's Honoring and Embodying the Feminine through Rest, Renewal, and Deep Listening. And I linked both of those events in the chat and gave their specific timing. Additionally, just a friendly reminder that Insight, because it's a nonprofit, we do rely on your generosity to keep going and provide these sittings for you. So donations are always welcome. And thanks you all for coming today.
Thank you, Carolyn, for moderating. And if I call you Caroline, it's because my stepdaughter is named Caroline. So sometimes I may mix up Carolyn and Caroline, but.
I'm Caroline.
You're Caroline too.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm Caroline, yes.
Makes it easy. And everybody, Caroline is a sophomore at USC who loves neuroscience and mindfulness, and we're happy to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can everybody unmute? We can say goodbye. I will see you next week.
Thank you, Trudy.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trudy.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good week.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.
Bye. Thank you all. Thank you, Trudy.
Bye.